Hi, friends.
Hello, friends. It's Shanika and Caitlin from Get Checkered. Get Checkered is part of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown and community supported. Today, we wanted to give a little shout out to a fellow Alberta Podcast Networker. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but we're going to work with that. Eat More Barbecue Podcast. I had the pleasure, actually, of being interviewed by Ryan Sanderson himself for my day job at Bessie. And it was really great to chat things all barbecue and meat. And also, he gave me some pointers on podcasting. Ryan is a seasoned pro, and his podcast features interviews from other businesses, chefs, recipes. He's all over Alberta competing in barbecue competitions. There's a whole subculture going on that I had no idea about. But to learn more about Ryan's podcast or other Alberta Podcasts Network or podcasters, head to albertapodcastnetwork.com.
Very good. Very cool. We are recording this, you guys. This is the post-turkey episode, and we are recording on Turkey Sunday here in Canada.
That's true. It is Thanksgiving. So we also have tomorrow off, which is a blessing.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. It will be very nice. Both Shanika and I need to catch up on sleep.
Yeah, we had a rough night. I just could not fall asleep for the life of me, which meant that I got maybe an hour in, maybe a little bit over. Caitlin also had a rough night when I came to sleep.
I was at a Friendsgiving yesterday. So I got home about 1 a.m. and the race started at 6 o'clock for us. So
Exactly.
it is what it is.
Just not the easiest thing. So we're definitely looking forward to just having later races for all the ones that are coming up next. Just the last one will be another 6 a.m. for us, which will suck.
It'll be rough, but we might be recuperated in time for that. I mean, we have USA coming up, Mexico, Brazil. So really looking forward to being able to sleep in again.
Exactly. I also wanted to say hello to a lot of new people that are listening to our podcast. From what we can tell, there's someone named Nicole that's already all the way based in New York who's listening to us. It's been nice chatting with her over Twitter. We've seen some growth just in all the listeners. So we want to say, hey, thank you for swinging by to our little corner of the internet. And we hope we can be entertaining even when we're half dead.
Yeah, and feel free to message us with thoughts and everything. We're always happy to chat. So
yeah, we love opinions that aren't just the two of ours.
Exactly. But we have a packed episode for you guys. I'm looking through how many notes we have, and yeah, it's going to cover a lot. So we're going to touch off with some weekly updates and track facts at the beginning. And then, of course, we're going to go into the weekend. So some quality highlights and race day and post-race interviews for you guys.
That's so exciting. There was a lot of news this week. So
there was. And I'm like, but it's race week.
I know. Everyone, please stop announcing things.
This could have been a really good non-race week episode.
I know.
But we'll go through them somewhat quickly.
Yeah.
So the first thing we wanted to note is that F1 came out, they announced their goal to produce 100% sustainable fuel. And I am putting it in air quotes because I think we've seen this before already announced in their sustainability strategy. It's just maybe this is their coming out to a lot more people.
Yeah.
It was good to see F1 started putting a lot of stuff on all their social medias. So getting the word out that this is one of their big initiatives. They want to have it developed for the 2025-2026 power unit because they're going to do it in 2022. And then they won't be touching power unit upgrades until that time. So they're going to do all their research into the sustainable fuel and try and integrate it with that release. So they are actively engaged in discussions with fuel companies about creating the fuel in the quantities needed for the championship. As well as then scaling up production for wider social use, which I did not know part of their strategy. So I really like seeing that fact. I think that's really good.
Yeah, I think it's really important, actually, that they share their learnings.
Yeah, no, exactly. They call this drop-in fuel pretty much because it can be used in a standard internal combustion engine without any modification to the engine itself.
Oh,
So,
that's good.
I mean, if they had to do changes to the engine itself, it might take even longer. So I'm
Exactly.
glad they can do that. And then some facts about it I saw were that the components that come from either a carbon capture scheme, municipal waste, or non-food biomass, while achieving greenhouse gas emission savings relative to fossil derived petrol of at least 65%. So there's a lot in that fact, but
Yeah.
let's just let carbon capture scheme. Let's go back to Seb when he did his like pit stop in Iceland a few weekends ago. You remember that? He
Yeah, it
just like,
feels like a lifetime ago, but
yeah, it was
yeah,
just like between races. He just stopped in Iceland to go see this really cool facility, and I'm pretty sure it had to do with carbon capture.
I think so too.
So very cool to see that.
Uh,
Yep. Next one.
with today being World Mental Health Day, which I'm going to be honest, I had no idea until I started seeing content from Formula One. So no, I'm hoping throughout the day we see some more stuff. Lando actually did an interview talking about mental health struggles, and this isn't surprising. I think being a top athlete that's very regimented, that stuff is very, very normal. So I'm glad that he is sharing his experiences. And actually, Toto did, Mercedes posted a video from Toto Wolff also talking about mental health in sports and what he's experienced too. So it's nice to see both of these men come forward and share mental health and the challenges that they're having, because I don't think it's talked about enough when it comes to men. So I'm glad to see it.
Nope, exactly. We do have some more engine penalties that train keeps rolling for this race. So it was announced before this race that Sainz would be changing a whole bunch of stuffs in his power unit. So he'll be starting back at the grid. And then it actually got announced that Lewis, like it was only speculated for the first few
Yeah.
days of the week that Lewis was going to do something similar. And it turns out that Lewis only replaced the internal combustion engine. So that being one component of the power unit, that's why he got a 10-place grid penalty versus starting at the back like Sainz. So like Sainz changing his power unit, we heard that Charles really liked the feel of the new power unit after that Russia race. So it made sense that they were going to change Sainz up after that.
It's always worth taking the penalty if you know that you have at least something better on the other side of it.
Exactly.
Caitlin
There is more, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, in the rest of it, Caitlin actually pointed this one out to me, which surprised me. So as everyone probably knows, and if you haven't yet, make sure you're Googling the Pandora Papers, which essentially talks about where billionaires, high 100 millionaires are hiding their money. And she found 2 Canadians on the list. Canadians in motorsport. Yeah, I need to make that clear. There's probably more Canadians, but in motorsport. So who'd you find?
So they noted the first one I saw was that Jacques Villeneuve was on the list. So he was the only Canadian to ever win a Formula One championships. So pretty much, I'm going to quote unquote exactly what they said in this report, but they're not in the Pandora report, but like the paper reporting it.
Yeah.
So Villeneuve lived a life of luxury in Monaco and Switzerland during most of his racing career, but lived in Quebec for a period in the 90s and from 2007 to 2013. The Pandora Papers show he had offshore companies set up in zero tax jurisdiction from the start of his career back in 1992. They were set up to receive racing and endorsement income.
So basically, this means he's been funneling money somewhere where he can't be taxed on.
Like a lot of money, because
for a very long time.
And then, I had that name down, and then it only is natural that I'm on social media and another article comes up with Lawrence Stroll's picture on it with Pandora Paper article name beneath. And I'm like, of course. So I really didn't write much, you guys, but Lawrence Stroll is named in that report too. And is anyone surprised by that?
Absolutely not, because billionaires want to stay billionaires, and one of the many ways to do it is to hide your money as much as you can to avoid being taxed. So this does not surprise me, but it's definitely annoying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it. I'm fully eat the rich, so they need to be taxed. We'll see what ends up happening though, with the fallout from this, because I don't think anything will happen, to be honest. We'll have a few salacious headlines for a little bit, but then after that, I'm sure people will move on, especially when it comes to
Mhm.
Formula One. Caitlin, you and I did an episode on Monaco. Everyone lives in Monaco for a specific reason, right? It's just to avoid
Yep.
being taxed. So I don't think much will change. The next headline is actually something Caitlin found as well with Danny Rick.
Yep. This is a random headline, you guys, but it was just on one of Danny Rick's Instagram stories. He's like, I finally made it into music. And so I'm like, what? And you look further and it's like he's listed as percussions on a song that was released. So he's in music now, which makes like he seems very into music. So I'm very
Mhm.
impressed he's freaking into it. I'm surprised it's percussion, but
You know what? A man of many talents,
exactly.
honestly.
So good on
So
him.
yeah, and make sure you go check out the track. I'm fairly certain it's still linked somewhere on his socials.
Oh
So
yeah, you can talk. We don't have it noted, but Danny Rick would probably have it somewhere on his
exactly.
socials. So
So heading to the circuit, Caitlin does what she does best, which is did a deep dive on all the facts that she could possibly find.
I think
And
it's fun looking up the facts of these
I think so
circuits.
too, because it puts perspective, and especially because I feel like with all the races that we're going to, we're essentially traveling the world, right? And
Hmm.
into new places. So it's nice to know the history around these tracks or the history around the countries that are in them. So yeah, I think it's great.
And I really think like with this Istanbul track,
Yeah.
it's not like a legacy track. It hasn't been used forever. The only reason it came back in 2020 and 2021 was because of COVID. So maybe a lot of
Oh,
people don't actually know about it. So I mean, we
yeah, I
tried to
didn't
look
know
into more about it, and like right off the bat, I could not find consistency.
that.
But I had it noted from Wikipedia, of
Of
course.
course.
It says this track is called Istanbul Park Circuit. It's in the Tuzla municipality of the Istanbul province.
Okay.
Now, when I was watching F1 TV this morning, they're like, so this track is located in Akrif, Akferat.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
nailed it.
but is it that or Tesla? Is Tesla the city? I don't know. But anyways, um, it's one of the two of those. Maybe they're the same. I don't know. But it's the very southeast corner of the province of Istanbul. Okay. So
Okay.
um it's technically in Asia. So Istanbul kind of bridges Europe to Asia, right? It's
Yeah.
called the Bosphorus Strait. Um, and so it's actually pretty cool. I drove over that and it's, I don't know, it feels cool. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna drive to Asia. Okay. But so yeah, it is a coastal place. They are saying back to Tuzla history because that's what I researched. Tuzla itself has a rich history. Today, it's huge for shipbuilding. It's known for
Okay.
its seafront and for seafood restaurants. And then note this, many wealthy Istanbul residents or the retired buy homes as it is far from the city. It's like a 2-hour drive, I think I heard, from like center of Istanbul. It's less crowded and still has a small town feel to it. Now, keep in mind that is because literally Istanbul is considered the largest city in Europe with 50 million people, which is huge. So, um, this track is one of a handful of circuits that run counterclockwise. So, it actually puts a lot of strain on the other side of the driver's neck typically. Um, there is a pretty well-known corner. That is turn 8. It's a high-speed left turn. It's called the Diabolica. And
I think
like I'm
that's
not going to categorize it as like a smooth
yeah.
high-speed left turn. It has 4 different apexes, so it's kind of like disjointed.
I think
But
that's a
it's
great
still
name actually for it as
Diabolica,
well.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw like because Red Bull puts up notes from Alex Albon before they race. And he like kind of points out, oh, great opportunity to overtake here. Like
Hmm.
this corner's tricky. So like on this corner, he's like, should be able to go full out, but be careful. So that's Diabolica. So and then onto tires. this track has a reputation for high tire wear. This year they chose the medium range compounds, so C2, C3, C4 for the slicks. That is a step softer than last year. Not that we actually ended up seeing them, but regardless, that was the path taken. The Turkish GP technically ran 2005 to 2011, and I know they were like, there was just different sides as to why they didn't want to go back.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much the government, I'm pretty sure, was saying that like it's not bringing in what we want, like all the money, and it's costing so
much money. Yeah.
So they came back, like I said, in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID. But yeah, interesting fact, because I'm like, I think that Turkish fans, like, they seem very excited.
And it was really full
today.
today.
Yeah.
So,
but I guess like having the 2-hour drive from the center of Istanbul isn't tempting for a lot of people.
that would make sense. Yeah.
So historically on this track from 2005 to 2011, the most successful driver has been Felipe Massa with Ferrari. He had 3 wins. Lewis Hamilton still currently standing with 2 wins here, even after today. Fastest lap was from Juan Pablo Montoya in 2005, but during quali that got broke, I'm pretty sure multiple times. This will be a 58 lap race. So these facts from racefans.net I kind of like. So you're supposed to be able to be in full throttle 69% of the time. So I think that's less than Sochi. It has a high downforce, and they're anticipating 46 gear changes a lap. So again, less than Sochi, which was I think 54. Yeah.
That is super exciting. And I found 2 headlines while we were actually watching the race. And I'm going to touch on the one with Valtteri first, but he put up his Mercedes AMG GT for sale to raise funds for his the go-kart track that's at his home in Lahti, Finland. So it just, the article that I saw was like a 2-minute read. There's not many other details other than, hey, the vehicle's up for auction, like people bid on it kind of thing. But he's doing what he can to make sure that kids can still kart in his neighborhood. And I think that's really, really great.
That's really cute.
Right?
You want to put some money in towards that?
Everyone, not sure. I think he shared this on his social somewhere, but if you have some cash burn a hole in your pocket, do it, because I think it's like, it's a nice sweet thing to do. I'm also curious to see if like Mercedes or any of the other drivers would chip in something. I feel like Seb has just such a soft heart that I feel like he would maybe donate something that could be auctioned off or something like that. Just my thoughts. Note to the drivers: signed helmets, I don't know, stuff like that, saving track so that we can have future Formula One drivers. I think that's a really good thing.
That's sustainability.
Yeah, exactly. The last headline is from the motorsport world. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because of sort of the overlap and where Formula One is going and the Miami race and all that kind of stuff. So Bubba Wallace became the second Black man to win NASCAR, which is a very huge deal. And it was really interesting because listening to all of the journalists, reporters, announcers, commentators, all of them, they were so excited, as they should be. But for fans of motorsport and, you know, who are on Reddit, on Twitter, on Instagram, and these other platforms, they were all like, yeah, this is really, really great. But none of you covered Lewis Hamilton's 100th win or his impact in motorsport. So I think this Bubba Wallace winning in NASCAR is a really great thing, but it also highlights how much Formula One needs to break into this space and into North America, and still hasn't done it well. So we do obviously have the race coming up in Austin, and hopefully just with more eyeballs on Formula One because of Drive to Survive, and with the upcoming, you know, Miami Grand Prix, they're slowly making waves. But I just thought it was interesting that a lot of motorsport fans were like, hello, this is a thing too.
So like, what publication was that in? Was that just like a New York Times newspaper or something?
So him winning was all over the place, but just not the criticism, but more highlighting about where's the conversation around Lewis was just fans online that I saw. So Twitter,
That's on like
Instagram.
the more major US publications versus like, because I
Yeah.
see Motorsport World and I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's motorsportworld.com that covered Lewis's.
Yeah, 100%. So it's the US ones for sure. Like even like US mainstream media. So think like Fox News, CBS, NBC, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
So it's like it's trying to break through. It's almost there. It's like knocking on the door.
Yeah, we just have to. I think that it's definitely heading there a bit faster, and Miami will help a lot. So we're heading in the right direction.
Very good. Okay. With that, we're going to go into another quick ad break. So looking for a way to give back? ATB Cares makes it easy for all Albertans to support the causes they care about. Donate to your favorite charity through ATB Cares, and ATB will match 20% of every dollar donated to eligible Albertan charities. To learn more and donate, visit atbcares.com.
And now we're into qualies, which, true to our form, we didn't watch. But
Watch it after.
yeah, exactly. But we're looking and seeing all the things. So, Caitlin, what was Saturday like?
So yeah, Saturday, it looked cold and like drizzly, and I don't know. They're like, "Is this rain?" I'm like, "I don't know." Someone tell me if it's considered raining or not. But I don't actually know if it was. Anyways, it was cold. The track looked cold and damp, and yeah, it was that. So drivers, a whole bunch of them were noting that they were having a hard time getting their tires up to temperature. There were quite a few spin-offs. I did not want to list all of them because there was quite a few. Some people were exceeding track limits because of lack of traction, etc. So it's just kind of like messy.
Yeah, just a mess.
So Mick Schumacher ended up, he had a good Q1 and he made it into Q2, which was really cute. He was really excited about that. So Danny Rick, though, on the opposite end of the spectrum, he had another terrible qualification day. The last one was like Portugal. Remember, we put a meme up. Actually, it was just like an Instagram post, semi-meme-ish, but he was like in 16th from qualification.
Yeah.
Like, oh. But he finished in 9th. So he was like, yeah, he got points from his like a picture from his days in Red Bull. But he ended up in 16th again. But I did note specifically, like, did not look as upset as he did in Portugal. So I found it very interesting. And like, I kind of tried to piece it together on racing. And then Shanika put the note in at the very beginning of racing. I'm like, there's a reason that like he wasn't as down as he was in Portugal. He found a way to make the most out of a bad situation in the end. But what ended up happening with Danny in Q1 is that the track had started to dry at the end of that session.
Yeah.
But he didn't capitalize for the last lap versus everyone else did. So everyone else got more grip for their final flying lap pretty much, and got a better time than him. So kind of sad to see. Also interesting to note was a Ferrari strategy with Sainz. So earlier we mentioned that Sainz was going to start at the back of the field. With a whole power unit change. And like we saw Charles and Max in Sochi pretty much not even run Q1. Or they might have done it, but they didn't run Q2 or something. Or didn't try very hard in Q1. They didn't want to wear their car, risk crashing or anything. Fair. Now, I'm pretty sure Sainz did a final lap in Q1 and he did a good time and he got into Q2. He pretty much bumped Danny into the elimination zone. Like Danny was sitting like 15. And then Sainz, I'm pretty sure Ferrari was like, this is the opportunity. Sainz, make sure you get into Q2. So it's, I thought it was interesting, kind of like, good on you, Ferrari, because like, why not? That's your competitor. You risk Danny staying in 15 and then him just like blowing field away in the next 2 sessions, right? Or you can just squash that risk altogether. So
yeah, I think Carlos actually really carried the team this race because it was also his slipstream that helped Charles do as well as he did too. So
very good. Yeah. But we do want to note that in Q2, Sainz didn't race at all. But I mean, Q1, he got Danny knocked out. So
that's all he needed.
right. I did know more about Q2 that there were some problems with that final corner. Like quite a few drivers were like kind of skidding out from it, and you're like, oh, this could be an interesting corner. Keep an eye on it for the race. So yeah, and one of those being Russell. He had a great final lap in Q2. I think he was having a fantastic time, but he exceeded track limits on the final turn, and his time does not count. So he did not make it out of Q2, which kind of sucked. But Mick ended up with P14 qualification, so tied with Sochi last race, makes his best ever F1 quali result. So he's
so great.
And then, of course, we're going to know what happens with Vettel because we like Vettel.
We do.
He ended up P11. He didn't make it out of Q2. I hope things turn around and really start showing up for him. Pretty much Q3 was good. And I'm with like Lewis got P1, Valtteri got P2, Max got P3. It was one of those, right? Like, okay. But because of Lewis's engine penalty, he would start P11. And Valtteri gets his pole, and they were cute because at the like post qualification, the top three had an interview, and Lewis is like, "Yeah, but I still get pole, right?" And they're like, "No." And he's like, "I have to." What? And like Valtteri's joking with him, and Max was actually joking with him too. It was really nice to see the rapport between all three of them, especially because like we know there's been some
like weirdness and some intensity. Yes.
So it was actually a fun interview to watch. And then an interesting fact is I saw a record from the WTF1 team that Valtteri now ties for the most pole position, a total of 18 times. And he is a driver that has never won a driver's championship.
I hate that stat for him. Oh God.
You think he's gonna get more poles if he goes to Alpha, or do you think like,
oh God,
he's gonna hold on to this record and just?
I think unfortunately he may, which is awful. I also wanted to say because when the drivers get pole position, they get those little like wheel trophy things, and Valtteri got his, but technically it was Lewis's first, right, or whatever, and they posted it on social, and Lewis had wrote like to Valtteri and then like a quick little note, like "you're fast though" or something like that, and signed it, which I thought was really cute and cheeky.
But it was cheeky, yeah, because he signed it like 102 because it would have been his 102nd pole. The way he spelled though, I'm like, oh, this is a bromance, right? Like just cheeky Joe.
100%. It was nice to see that little bit of, I guess, like their dynamic play out in a bit more
like,
public way.
It did not sound like there was a hidden maliciousness underneath anything. It was just generally like humor between the two, which was very nice.
Exactly.
But pretty much, yeah, that was quali. And then we're going to get into race day.
Yeah,
race day. Sunday here.
Race day, like we opened the podcast with, we were exhausted. I was quite literally still in bed with my face like turned to the side looking at my laptop, but our starting grid was Valtteri in P1, and then Max in P2, Charles in P3. Sorry, I just see what Caitlin did with Pierre in P4, which exciting, look at him in the AlphaTauri.
I put a little heart next to his name because I knew Shanika was going to say this.
I know, and no one can see our notes where there's a little heart. Fernando Alonso, Caitlin added an exclamation mark because also very exciting. P5, Checo in P6, followed by Lando, Lance Stroll, Yuki in P8, which again, that's so funny. The people
that's P9, man.
Sorry, P9, but the people that the drivers that Caitlin knew I would be excited about, she's added emphasis to them.
So they roll off the tongue when Shanika goes through the list.
Yeah. And then, followed by Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, obviously at P11. P12, you have Esteban Ocon, followed by George Russell, Mick Schumacher, which is so exciting to see, and then Danny Rick, Nicholas Latifi, who, man, I keep forgetting about this man, followed by both of the Alfa Romeos, so Gio and then Kimi, and then the person we never talk about, and then Carlos Sainz, who was dead last, and obviously not surprising because, as we know, he knew that was going to happen to begin with.
But actually, Shanika saying that made me recall that. So Mick qualified 14th, but he ends up starting grid 13th. That is his best ever starting grid.
Good point. That's such a good point.
And then actually, there's another change up to the starting grid because I literally put it in last night. Shani found this news out first, and I saw it and I was like, huh.
Yeah. So I was on Twitter this morning, not when I should have been sleeping, frankly, and it was announced that Danny was going to have a bunch of upgrades to his uh, everything, basically. So the internal combustion engine, the turbocharger, and the motor generator unit heat, which we talked about in our last podcast episode, actually. So if you want to know more about it, go listen to that one. And because of that, he was actually going to be starting behind Sainz, right?
Because I think it's just like based on qualifying.
Yeah.
And then the penalties are after that. Something weird like that. Yeah, I think Sainz was 20th though. No, Sainz was 19th, sorry.
Yeah, so he's dead last, which is fine. And Caitlin has a note here that she mentioned it a little bit earlier, but that's why it seemed that he was not as bummed out as he was before. He did say that there's more opportunity to do more with the car, and that he actually mentioned that in the post-race interview that he did for the last race. So I think just like if he knew that that was there more that could come in the car, then it makes sense to just take the penalty and deal with it. And also what we saw with Max is if you have opportunities just to like lean into a poor qualifying and what he loses 4 more spots, which in this case isn't like that big of a deal, why not do it? Especially because you want the newer parts for the rest of the season. So this is kind of the best time to do it.
You've seen success from like everyone else that's been putting in their new parts.
Exactly.
So he went right over to his like team in the garage and was like talking and looking at screens. Like right after he was eliminated in qualifying. So it's like they probably were talking about this is maybe something to look at. So
yeah, it definitely had to be on the strategy list. Hey, just like if anyone qualifies poorly, we're gonna probably swap them with something new in their vehicles because everyone else is upgrading. And also Ferrari, right? Upgraded both their cars.
yeah,
So
and they're doing well. So
exactly. The first note that I made was that it was still like not raining, but just like drizzling.
Yes.
Drizzling.
I couldn't
And
see anything, but it's like everything stayed wet throughout the race. So I was like,
exactly. It was like I feel like that kind of misty rain thing
just
that
like
happens.
miserable to be in kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next thing I saw through my very tired eyes was just the jarring white of the Red Bulls against like this very stark background. So Caitlin, I have to ask you, we did know that they were going to be outfitted differently. There's photos all week and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But just what do you think about the Red Bull team in white?
It was different. And I mean, like, I can't do white clothing. So there's, I'm pretty biased against the white clothing, but I mean, it was for something special, right? Like it was
Yeah.
for their Honda team. And they ended up having to like take their pictures again, I think, because like in their new outfits. And someone in post race was talking about like, look at Sir. I think it was Alex. He's like, look, Sergio did not get a good picture.
No, and that's like my thing too, because I saw the photos when they were released earlier this week, and I was like, who did this? Because even Max doesn't look that good, and Sergio looks really not good. And they didn't even try to save him with Photoshop. So I don't know what happened. And also because the white is so harsh, like it's just like you kind of like everything's got to look pretty solid, or else it's quite evident. So it was nice to see the Red Bull in a different color, but it also was like very jarring for me this early morning where I was like so freaking
I had
tired.
to put my blue lens glasses on because I'm like I have a headache.
Yeah.
Eyes hurt.
Exactly. The lowest dim, the like turn on all the red for your it was just a mess for me too. So I get it. And I also saw Seb was wearing a really cute shirt again promoting sustainability. Did you have a chance to see it at all? No. So he was wearing a shirt that just said water equals life. And under his it's probably not it was over top of his like suit or whatever. I'm guessing he took it off to race because it was quite large now that I think about it. But I thought that was really sweet because this is something that he's obviously very passionate about. And even Lewis said this week that he's really happy to see Seb has found something that he's really passionate about and like wants to share and talk about it publicly. Because as we know, Lewis is always talking about social issues. So to have another driver that's also like, hey, this is important to me. I found my thing and I'm going to now spend the years that I've left in Formula One talking about it and drawing attention to it. It was really exciting. So I thought it was really cute. I don't know. I think everyone's a Seb stan because he just seems so nice. So
I like it.
Yeah. I figured you would. I was like, oh my gosh, Caitlin would love this.
We should have a conversation with Seb one day. That could be fun.
Yeah, you could ask him every question under the sun, you with your brilliant, sustainable mind.
Yeah, and you just like him, you know?
Yeah, I'd be like, I just think you're great. How are you so nice?
Anyways, moving on. Pretty much want to get to the racing. So everyone's starting on intermediates, okay?
Yeah.
So basically, everyone's starting on intermediates because of this drizzle. And we have 58 laps. So let's go. What happens from the get-go, Shani?
Well, Valtteri has a really good start. And I think that in my, again, dead body and eyes, I was surprised because we know that the starts are always so rough and that Max normally will just lay down the hammer. He did mention, and we're jumping ahead a little bit, that with the post-race interview that's starting on the inside line, she's not the best here. And I made the note of just Valtteri, just please hold off Max. Because I don't know, I really feel for him and felt for him this race. You know, he's on pole position. I just wanted him to win. I think that all of us were feeling that way for him. So for him to have a good start and get out ahead of Max was just really, really great.
Yep, very good start.
Yeah.
And then like someone who didn't maybe have the best start because turn one, we had Fernando Alonso go spinning, and none of us I didn't see why. Maybe you did right at the beginning, but
I didn't see it either. So you didn't see it on F1 TV, and I didn't see it on Sky Sports either, or like TSN.
Nope.
But
so we just see him spinning. It's like, ay, man, just spinning on because it's a wet surface. You know, like you should know better. But I mean, we kind of learned that. Clarification, it was Gasly that bumped into his rear left tire, and Gasly was saying that he felt sandwiched because he had Perez on the other side. So I mean, okay, there was a reason then that Alonso did a spinny.
My favorite thing about when these incidents happen is when they cut to the radio, because depending on the personalities, you'll get a different reaction. If there's like a little bump like this and there's a little bit more visibility, if it's Seb, he's just like, I don't think, like, it's okay, as a car damage, fine, not keep going kind of thing. But Fernando Alonso called him a stupid guy, and I thought it was the funniest thing.
I think Alonso this week has been very sassy and vocal about how he feels like everyone's treated differently with the rules and regulations, and
just king of sass. So when I heard him say that, I was like, oh my god.
Of course he would, yes.
Yeah.
So we do get news. This is jumping ahead, but related. So Gasly gets his 5-second penalty for that, which some people are like, that he didn't deserve that. Like the whole let them race clause unofficially. Just it's the beginning of the race. Stuff happens at the beginning, and I kind of see that.
Yeah, and I think it feeds into what Caitlin just said about Fernando Alonso kind of being a little sassy this week. Again, you know, would this rule have counted for someone else? Like, would have someone else gotten a penalty? I don't know. Would have they just said it was a racing incident? I don't know. And for me, I made this note because it's just when I was watching that first lap and the cars going into the corners, it was insane. It was such a mess. So it didn't surprise me that Gasly kind of got bumped and shuffled around. What surprised me more, though, is that there wasn't more drama, I guess, in the first few corners because everyone was like fighting for position.
Yeah, and there it was just a lot of spray.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, so just the one incident on that turn one, but turns out that we couldn't figure out. Well, I had a question mark because I'm like, I couldn't figure out why, but we find out later on that Alonso himself has a 5-second penalty, and we're like, well, why? Turns out he ended up going into Mick on this lap. So Alonso's first lap was just not hot for, it was just not great.
That's so funny. So then the thing that he got upset for Pierre doing to him, which is like bumping him, is literally what he ended up doing to Mick.
Yeah.
Later. So
like same lap.
It happens.
Anyways, yeah, that was Alonso on lap 1. But Shanika and I were both kind of noting at the same time because we are watching separately, but we're like, Tsunoda is in 8th, and he is like holding off Lewis like very well. Surprisingly.
Yeah, it was super impressive, and I think for he really did Red Bull, so not AlphaTauri, but specifically Checo and Max a pretty big favor actually, because he held him up for close to 8 laps, which for him in the AlphaTauri being a new driver to Formula One, that's a pretty big deal. So I don't know. I thought it was great.
Very impressive. And I mean, like, I think he has a bright future in F1. I hope he stays.
I mean, we got another year with him, right? So hopefully can show more of that.
Yep, exactly. So we hear some radio stuff from Max. Max is like, he's having gear shift issues, and it's like, holy what? Like, that's not good. Like, Shanika and I were just saying that there's like average 46 gear changes a lap, and you're having problems with your gear shift.
Yeah, and he did clarify this on the post-race interview. So it seemed like there was a certain alert that kept coming up, which wasn't relevant to the actual what he was actually doing in the car. But when you hear there's gear shift issues over the radio, you're
alarming.
You're thinking, oh my goodness, is he going to get into an accident? So I'm glad he clarified in the post-race interview, because I was definitely nervous for him.
Just an alarm.
Yeah, just to freak us out, to make sure that we're awake and paying attention.
Thanks, Max. He's also probably saying that he's starting to pull the Lewis in his tires trick. Psyching out the other teams. Oh, Max is having problems with his gear shift. You know how things get around.
I mean, maybe. That's the thing. It's tough to know if these drivers are being honest. I mean, Lewis is the only one where it's like, for sure he's not being honest. But everyone else, like, do they start building that habit too? And then are we as viewers just completely?
And then it's just like codename between them and their team.
When they're like, oh yeah, let's go to plan 2B, and it's like, what?
They'll start saying stuff on the radio like, okay, elephant has broke free of the cage. The alligator is swimming in the river. That's what they're going to start saying now, and we're going to be like, what?
Okay, it's a lot, but again, I'm glad he's okay.
We noted that Gio, I think we're all aware of the ongoing Alfa Romeo issue. Shanika and I bring it up like in all the driver change updates episodes. We're like, and still nothing. We've heard about Giovinazzi, so that man just needs points.
Yeah, he really, really needs points. And as I was typing out the note being like, he really needs points, he's in 13th now, thinking, okay, it's just a couple slots, like that's all you need to move. Then Carlos Sainz is just charging up the back of the grid, and he, as I'm typing, Gio needs points, passes Giovinazzi, and I'm like, oh, okay, that sucks. I really think that the longer, unfortunately, that Gio is racing without getting points, the more apparent it is that the decision is going to be what it is, which is like the person that we keep saying, Guan Yu Zhou, will likely be entering Formula One. So
just side tangent, I heard a wild rumor that Guan Yu is looking for like a 3-year contract.
Interesting.
And so Alfa Romeo has someone they really want, I guess, in mind that's even further down the line, but like they want him in 2 or 3 years, likely, I would assume, because they don't want to do 3-year. And so like they're having troubles with Guan Yu coming to an agreement on that. So they're like, maybe Oscar's back in the running for like a year contract if he'll accept the year. And I'm like, this is wild.
I think that's so exciting because it would be nice to. I mean, Oscar deserves
He
a
deserves
seat.
it, yeah.
He totally deserves a seat, and I think Guan Yu is probably doing the right thing as a business person
Yep.
and as someone in the sport. We know he's bringing in like 30 mil in sponsorship, so he should be using that leverage as much as he can to get what he wants.
But I also know getting your foot in the door, it'll help, especially if like Oscar can perform. It's like those teams will just be like,
He'll be really happy, and
So
maybe we'll take maybe that 1 year at Alfa Romeo would be like the perfect thing for Oscar.
I mean, he'd have to drive to survive on that one. So, anyways, it was just like one article I saw that was saying that, so it could be interesting. And we just still don't know. So, I mean, keep your ears out, you guys. And then like again on that topic of Carlos getting past him, talking about Sainz. So let's remember Sainz started like 19th, right?
Yeah.
By lap 14, he ran up to P11.
Insane.
Like impressive. He does a pass on Vettel, and I noticed it's like it's not a clean pass. He's like wobble wobble, and he ends up bumping into Vettel's front left tire during the pass. So in a post race, I guess Sainz said he did go over and apologize to Seb about that one. But I think that was just track conditions that led to that.
Yeah.
Then, Sainz started 19, Danny started 20. Danny only got up to P16
I
with the same amount
know.
of time.
That's so horrible. And as we've talked about before, and Formula One fans know, McLaren and Ferrari are fighting against each other, right?
Mhm.
Like it's them two battling out. So to have two of the team members start at the back of the grid and have one move up so rapidly through the grid and have one that like basically ends up stuck for McLaren, like it's just not great.
Yeah. Oh, it's just like he had so much success. Like he won in Monza. That was 2 races ago.
Yeah. It feels like it was eons ago now, but it's so hard to tell what's going on with the vehicle, like the carts and the cars sometimes. So I'm hoping with these upgrades that Danny can get back in
And this is
contention again.
it. Like this is the first race in a while he's had to do. Like he's been in a McLaren on intermediates,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been intermediates the whole time. Like I think the other races he still got back onto slicks with his McLaren. So
Yeah,
maybe he's just not comfortable with intermediates yet.
and the McLaren probably like total possibility.
Right?
We did note that Lewis, after being held off by Yuki Tsunoda so well, Yuki was working his heart out. He just like glides by Lance Stroll and Lando Norris.
Yeah.
It was nothing.
It was like props to Tsunoda though, right? Like
Yeah. I just thought it was so funny that it didn't even look like they saw him. At least with Lance Stroll, it didn't even look like he saw him. And then all of a sudden you just see like Lewis just very minimal effort drive by. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's great. I made another note. As I was saying, I was listening to the Sky Sports one and watching the Sky Sports broadcast, and Jenson Button and the team, they were making fun of Karun because he had to like run around, and they were like, this is like the most exercise you've gotten and stuff like that. And I was like, that is so funny.
I saw this note. I was like, what?
It just was like this fun little, I don't know. I just thought it was cute. They're just teasing each other. And because he was trying to like run through the rain, essentially. I just thought it was cute. So talking about Lewis and his tires, Caitlin, what was going on?
Yeah, so you know how Lewis always talks about his tires. So he's saying like, my tires are bald. And it's like, okay, but we can actually see they're bald. So we believe you this time. We fully do. And then kind of you started hearing all the other team radios kind of be like, Lewis is balding his tires pretty fast. And then Lewis on his fucking radio, he's like to his team, is anyone else like having the same problems with their tires?
Yeah.
Like he does not get a straight answer to the question. It was, I didn't catch exactly what they said, but I'm like, that's not answering his question though.
Yeah, it was more like oh yeah, we'll look into it, Lewis. Like not even, and they just never answered him. And it was like, what? Yeah, I don't know.
How are you like the best in the world and your team is the best in the world and they still don't communicate properly?
Seriously. It was a little ridiculous. Which we do actually find out later, the issues with the tires were pretty consistent for all the drivers. So there was
Lewis
some
was just
issues
like the first maybe to go on radio about
and be
them.
like, what the hell is going on? I noted that Danny Rick was actually getting a lot of, so Sky Sports, they were listening in on the radio with Danny and McLaren. So I didn't hear this myself, but he was having a lot of issues with braking. And because of that, the team was like giving him extra instruction and like trying to tell him to brake, use certain different mechanisms on in the car to try and brake in different ways. And it seemed like at this point in the race, he was really, really having a hard time. So I noted that it didn't look like he was going to get that much farther than where he was, which I was kind of like wrong. So I'm glad I was wrong. But I honestly thought at that point he would be stuck at like P16 or even fall farther back because you need to be able to break into these corners. So yeah, just not the best day, I would say, for McLaren.
Um, on the McLaren train though. We do hear on Lando's radio, um, he starts telling his team that his tires are quote unquote like slicks now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting because it's like, is this a team strategy that like Danny, who's sitting in 16th, Lando at this point is sitting in 7th. And they put Danny in pit change to another set of intermediate tires. Like the first guy to do this by like a pretty long shot.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
And so I think like it was Danny's in 16th. We can see if like this makes much of a difference before we try it on Lando.
Yeah.
Um, but like if Danny was having problems with his braking,
Mm-hmm.
it was just like I'm kind of getting the impression it was how he was using the car versus like the actual components of the braking system being wrong because they would have looked at that in the pit, right?
Yeah, that's what I understood from what Sky Sports was saying, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. So there wasn't like it wasn't like something was broken or breaking, but just the configuration and the way
Hmm.
that he was using it wasn't helping him in any way. So he needed to be talked through it.
Okay. Well, yeah, so they didn't no mechanisms to change, I guess, in his pit. So he just goes on to the new winters. Um, to be honest, though, it's like I don't know, I'm kind of skipping ahead of myself here, but you hear right off the bat the Ferrari team radio to Charles is like, Danny is not going faster on these tires. Like, oh, okay. Like everyone just knows.
And it's so interesting that that's a thing. Like I just realized how intrusive it is that everyone can hear whatever the people are saying.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's why you do need the code names and code sentences because everyone can hear everything. It's so ridiculous.
I feel like I swear I've heard something before about they needed to crack down on like code names because too many people were using code names and like but if you make the radio that public, of course people are going to
Mhm.
do code names.
Yeah, 100%. And there was also that little not era, but portion of Formula One where they were not encouraging or trying to stop the whole like driver one, driver two thing. So
Yes, I think
yeah,
that's what I was talking about.
yeah, that's exactly it. So they to try and basically make sure that everyone was racing and the teams had this new directive where they couldn't be like, okay, our number one driver needs to let the number like needs to go past the number two driver or whatever. So they started using code names to make it happen. Bizarre. Just everyone just trying to find ways to make the system work for them, which, you know, can't hate too much. Around this time, after, Danny goes into the pits, I don't know if you saw anything, Caitlin, on your end, but again, it was one of those moments where I just saw Sonoda spin and I was like, what is happening here?
Yeah, no, they showed it on my feed too.
Yeah, I think it was turn 8, maybe 8 or 9. He literally like hit a puddle and then like spun, lost a few places. But at when that happened, it was clear that he needed to go back into the pits. So pretty soon after that, he was back in trying to get new inters and then get back out there. So not great though for Yuki because he was doing
that's
really well.
he dirtied his tires up pretty bad. So
Yeah. And he was doing well before that. So it's kind of sucked, but it happens, especially when it's wet.
yeah, it was a full puddle. Did you see the puddle?
Well, you know what I thought was so funny? It's because like none of us saw what happened. I just saw him spin. And they're like, oh yeah, he like drove through some water. But then you hear Pierre when he's coming in on the lap be like, oh, there's like a giant puddle. And then it's the exact same turn where like Yuki went off. So yeah, I didn't know until Pierre was like, there's a puddle at that turn.
Interesting.
Like, oops, okay. Whoopsies.
Not very good. It's not good for an F1 track.
Yeah, not great.
Just quickly, some more notes around this time. With Ferrari, we were seeing some more. Charles was doing amazing. He's staying in third and he's clocking some of the fastest track laps. Like a clean third pretty much the whole time. Like no one challenging him. He's not like defending for the position and all. It's a pretty like third's his in this at this point of the race. We hear on the radio that Sainz is actually, he wants to do a one-stop strategy. And the commentators were like, well, what's he going to switch to? Like we just saw Danny switch to inters and them not help, really. Yeah. So, and also like the rules say that like if you're on slicks, you have to do 2 different compounds of slicks. But if you start with inters, you can pretty much stay on the same, like wets or inters, you can stay on those the whole time. You don't need to pit.
Yeah, you can basically do whatever you want if you're on inters.
So that was interesting to hear. And then I think like I want to say in past years, this track like it's been 2-stop, 3-stop strategies. So it's just like inters just bring, and the rain brings a whole different game. So
no, I didn't know that.
I think that could be a total lie, you guys, but I mean, that's it.
The one that we never talk about kind of caused a little bit of a situation. Again, not sure if they just didn't see Lewis, but just such a dangerous move. Lewis was coming to lap them and they just didn't move and cut
pulled in
right
front of him too. Like he who shall not be named pulled in front of Lewis, went like he was off of the racing line. He went back onto the racing line for the turn, and Lewis had to back off so there won't be a crash. And it's like, you have a blue flag, sir.
All the freaking rules. Like it's so dangerous. And seeing it from Lewis's angle, it was like so close to being an accident. And thank God Lewis is so seasoned, because he was able to obviously read the situation quick enough. And you know, all these Formula One drivers have very fast reflexes, but it's just like if that was a less seasoned driver, that would have been, I felt it would have been an accident for sure. But by doing that, it cost Lewis like 2 to 3 seconds because
and he was like on the hunt for Perez at this point, right?
Yeah, and desperately trying to take down Perez. So not great.
It was stupid. And like I don't know about your commentators, but mine were like almost implying that like yet another reason he should not be here.
Yeah, they were a bit kinder, but it was just like there's blue flags for a reason. Like maybe he just didn't see him, and I'm like, yeah, but he keeps doing this stuff.
Well, I honestly think that like if you're not being aware, how are you in F1? How can you say, oh, I didn't see him? How can you say that when you're going 300 kilometers an hour?
And especially when you are in a Haas, you know you're at the back of the grid, so you know where you're
will be getting lapped. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where it's like it makes absolutely no sense. So it pissed me off though, just because seeing it from Lewis's angle, I was like, holy shit, that was not good. Ugh, I did not like that.
Yeah. No, anyways, that's the last we will talk about him. Yeah. Still a very bad move. We're back on to Alonso. So Alonso, after his his spin-off on turn 1, and the fact that he crashed into Mick would give you an implication that he's kind of driving at the back of the field. And he kind of stayed there. He pits on lap 30 because I think his team as well is like, well, let's try something. We're already back of the pack. Yeah. But Alonso had to serve his time penalty on this pit. So at the time was when like I didn't understand why he needed to serve a penalty. Then we figured out it was for the Mick incident on lap 1. But pretty much, yeah, at this point, like lap 30 is still just Danny Rick, who like way before everyone else changes to inters, and now Alonso changed back to the inters. And yeah, interesting. But it kind of like it got hectic after he went in. But so everyone started pitting like lap 37, I want to say. But before that, we did have a big event happen on lap 35. It was probably like the most exciting part of the race, in my opinion.
I agree. It was the most wheel-to-wheel racing where there wasn't an accident, which was nice. There was no bumping or anything like that. But Lewis was working very hard to pass Perez. And those corners, hey, the 4 corners are just so tight. And it was like, I don't know, sometimes looked like it was going to be Lewis. Sometimes it looked like it was going to be Perez. Like, what is happening here? And Perez ended up coming out on top. Caitlin did note here, and I think we all saw it, that Lewis, the lines that he took, it got to the point where Perez was like pushed quite significantly into the pit lane area and was somehow able to regain position.
Question for the FIA about that, because like when Lando crossed the pit lane white solid line, didn't he get reprimanded, or he was like told off? People were talking about it at least. This time no one's talking about the fact that like, isn't it bad to cross the white solid lines on the pit lane? Like, can't you not re-enter?
I think so, from what I understand. And from the Sky Sports commentators and Jensen Button, they were saying, yeah, like normally, you know, there would be something, but it just seems like because of the weather and the conditions, it's kind of like whatever. But then if we're talking about consistency, then why did Pierre get the penalty when it was clearly like a racing incident? Don't know. But they were like, yeah, surprised not to hear anything. But
maybe Alonso was right when he was like, depends on your nationality.
I mean, maybe, who knows? Or like what team you're driving for, who knows? If you're the top 2, like, do people, I don't know, we don't know. And I took a note here that just Perez did what he needed to do, which is just not slam the door. It wasn't like a Fernando Alonso situation, but he really put the work in to keep Lewis at bay. And that's something that we've been dying to see from Valtteri. And we just haven't seen that from Valtteri. So I think it's funny that we've seen it from Perez this race. We saw it with Yuki Tsunoda. So people are doing it. I just wish that Valtteri was also defending as well as those two have been, and Fernando Alonso this season. So,
well, I mean, Valtteri pretty much got demoted, and I think this was a big part why, to be honest. And I want, like, I can just see Toto pulling this up and be like, George, this is what I expect. Can you deliver?
I agree. Seriously. Ugh.
We'll see what next year brings. But yeah, I think Perez is doing great in this race.
Yeah, I completely agree. This race was much needed for him, just as this race was much needed for Valtteri in terms of like confidence and all that other stuff. So, you know, you want, as Red Bull, you want your teams to be doing this kind of hard work and you want them to be close together. So really good job by him.
So we had that on lap 35. That was a great moment to see. But we're going to go right back in to pits because this is the big pitting party, as we'll call it.
Yeah.
So we had Max kind of started off on 37, and we just noted like it's a quick ass pit stop. It was 2.1 seconds. It looked beautiful. It was clean. It was like, oh, very nice. And then literally right after him, Sainz goes in, and his is an 8.1 second stop.
Yeah, not so great.
I don't know, I did not capture why it was like that, but you do see, if you look at the replays, like Sainz is like talking to he's very like Italian in his car, like talking to his mechanics. What is happening? What are you doing?
I think it's again, the issues that Red Bull had with the fact that there's more human interaction now. Red Bull obviously fixed it because they're fine now, but the other teams are still not at 100%. And you could see that with Ferrari, because Carlos Sainz had like even a 3 second, because we know no one can do like a 2 second like Red Bull can. It would have been so great for him but it just didn't happen, and his car was just sitting there, and it was like, what is happening? And you know that
Yeah,
likely just some guy like didn't press the button fast enough, and they were just sitting there. So not great.
kind of shitty. So yeah, 8.1 seconds, not what you want to see ever. But Bottas then goes on to his pit.
Mhm.
So he has a 2.5 second. It's pretty good for Mercedes. Sorry, the early morning's getting to me. Mm. And then Vettel. We have Vettel going. Vettel comes out of the pits with slicks on.
Yeah.
He was the first guy to try slicks this race. He ended up being the only guy to
Always the
try slicks.
guy to try slicks. Yeah, it didn't work in his favor, and it was like painful to watch. Hey,
The commentators were like, they compared it to Lando at Sochi, and it kind of broke my heart because, like, Shanika noted it correctly. It looks like Bambi on ice.
just Seb had no control over his car, and it looked like he was doing the right thing, which was like trying to keep it out of everyone else's way. But he was just a danger, like being out there in the with the tires. It was just like such a mess. But I think it's
On
one
the
of those
radio,
things.
he's like, it's not working.
And it's one of those things that's so hard to call, because if you're the first one on it and then it dries up, then it's like
Mm-hmm.
great. But if you're the first one on it and then nothing changes, then you end up like Seb, and it's just not good. It's just not great. It's just not great at all.
Yeah, it was a little bit unfortunate.
Mhm.
He ended up going back in. Oh, sorry, guys. He ended up going back into the pits to change back to Inters shortly
Mhm.
after. But I mean, we had one more bit of excitement because he's like in the pit lane going back for his second pair of Inters, and he slides in the pit lane because he's still on his legs.
See, just a wild time for Sam. Not a great call by Aston Martin. Don't know what
Tried.
their strategist is doing.
No one
But
else tried after that.
no, it was a bit of a lesson to everyone.
um, so we have that Perez went in after that with the 2.5 second stop.
Mhm.
Um, we had it like, was this you or me that noted it as an interesting call? Is that me?
I think it was you, but I actually understand why you did it.
Well, because it's also, I probably had my thoughts at the time, but I'm thinking now because it's like Perez is tire management god. Why are you putting him in to change
Mhm.
tires? If like
100%. Yeah.
not everyone's doing it yet. So, what are your thoughts though?
No, I actually agree with you. I thought that it was interesting that they called him in at this point specifically. And because we know Perez can manage tires like no one. So it's like you don't really need to do it now, but it ended up being the right call, right? Like it was the right call for the team. So I was also like, yeah, he could go longer, but
Right.
it was the right
Well, and
call
because
again.
Lewis was behind him at this point. I think that's
Mhm.
also why I noted it as interesting because it's like it's a free pass for Lewis then.
Yeah, you just gave up your spot. Why? And especially when your driver is known for how he can manage tires. But worked out in the end for them. So we
Yes,
stand
but
corrected.
still interesting at the time.
Agreed.
Um, so who else is in the top few? I can't remember what position he was, but Charles. Oh, I think he was in. Yeah, okay. So Charles, he's asking to stay out with his OG intermediate tires. Seems like yeah, okay. And I mean, Charles sounded pretty excited to try it because
Mhm.
he's in first place at this point.
He
Lap
is
40 out of
leading
50.
the Grand
And he's
Prix.
like, can I just stay on these tires? Like, I'm on a pit. I'm in first. And it seems like, yeah, try it. Try it. So I don't know. That was kind of cute to see. It's like you can even just hear the excitement in his voice. And he's
Yeah,
like,
where he's like,
okay.
please, just please keep me out here. I want to
Um,
try.
and then we're going to go back to Danny because Danny did his change a long time ago. Now, with everyone in the midfield doing their pits now, the late 30s, Danny ends up in like P11 at this point. So that was nice.
Right. He finally gets the ability to move up just enough, which
Mhm.
is good. We love to see it. Oh God.
Oh, I definitely noted the next one wrong. But so Charles and it ends up being Lewis as well want to stay on the OG intermediate tires.
Mm-hmm.
But we find out pretty fast that the pace of the old intermediates cannot hold up to what like people that switched to the new intermediates, such as Bottas and Verstappen. You guys, if you can see my video, you can see my cat for the first time. Fergie. This is Fergie.
You get visuals on everything.
Yeah. Oh, honey. Hi, baby boy. Yeah, so Lewis is on the team radio a lot. And there was actually quite a few back and forth. I don't know if you put those two, but it's like his team's like, okay, we want you to box. And Lewis is like, no, I really don't think I should box. I really think I'm gonna try and stay out on these tires. So like we know that a pit would put him behind Perez and Gasly at this point, about 25 second pit, right? So yeah, we have Lewis not really aligning with his team's opinions about pitting him to get onto a second set of inters. So it's interesting because it's like what the team can see with all their simulations versus like what you can feel in the car when you're Lewis. And I don't know. I think it's tricky, right? Especially on wets. It's kind of like the simulation's not going to account for everything that the driver can feel. And yet the driver just like, there's so much that can happen with drivers not in your peripheral or like anything that you don't know what the strategy could do to help you, right? And so I don't know. Maybe it's just another communication thing where they just need to communicate better.
Yeah, I know. I was actually going to say the fact that you pointed it out a little bit earlier in this episode, and then to have another situation where it seems like they're communicating, but they're not actually communicating effectively with each other. And this is something that Jenson Button noted while this was going on Sky Sports, because obviously he was a driver himself. And he's like, I don't think Lewis has enough information. And he said that multiple times over. So yeah, I think that there just wasn't enough communication between all of them.
Yeah, it was in the end of like this first little interaction. His team agreed over radio to give him pretty much another lap of freedom, but we know this conversation is going to come back up, and the communication wasn't any better at that point. But
yeah.
Also, one thing I wanted to know was the fact that like during this call, they go over to like they start filming the Mercedes garage, and you see some of the mechanics like start to get ready, like bring the tires out, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm anxious because what if Hamilton just does a surprise, like, okay, yeah, I can box right now. I'll just do it. And his team isn't ready and they're like scrambling for a pit and cost him time. Like I could just picture it happening. And I was just like, oh no, it didn't happen. But like my anxiety peaked a little bit there.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it was a bit of a, yeah, they're gonna have to, that there's gonna be a post debrief situation. It's gonna be pretty intense. Around this time is when Max was actually having problems again with his steering wheel. And to semi-quote him, he said that my wheel keeps going farther and farther down left. And again, I was like, this does not sound good. So he did finish the race safely. For anyone that hasn't watched it yet, don't worry, no accidents, no nothing. He is fine. But hearing that again, it's quite jarring because it's your steering wheel. That's one thing is that you just don't want anything to be wrong with. So he seems
again, like considering this guy's going like 300 kilometers an hour and his steering wheel has a problem.
Yeah, it's just scary. It's scary, and I did not like that.
I don't know what's happened. Like what happened with his car today? He's just problem central.
Yeah, just it wasn't the best. Probably not the smoothest drive either.
I hope it gets figured out because that is scary to even just hear about. But Max is at the front, and we have a fight for the front, fight at the front for the remainder of the race. We're pretty much watching. See some shuffles with the top five. So Bottas changed to new intermediates. Leclerc did not. So Bottas did have better pace, and he eventually passes Leclerc lap 46. I wanted Leclerc to win. I think that'd be fun to see, but I mean, okay. It's not the way the cards played out today. That's fine. And then after the pass by Bottas, it kind of like dawns on the whole team and Charles that like, these tires are not going to cut it. we do not have the pace. So they do pit him. He comes in after Bottas, Verstappen, Hamilton, but he comes up before Perez. And then, so we do see there's a huge pace change, and he is over a second faster than Hamilton's pace. Hamilton, again, being on the old intermediates. And then, I don't know if you heard this radio from Lewis, but he's pretty much on the radio. He has like hecticism in his voice. He's like, I'm sliding around a lot, but it's fine.
Yeah, I did hear it on our end, but it was so funny because Jensen Button's like, oh, it sounds like he's having fun. And it's like, I don't know if I would say that sliding around while you're driving a really fast car and it's like a lot of pressure because, you know, you need points for your team, but also yourself. It sounds like a lot of fun, but
it came across as hectic though.
Yeah. I also wanted to note, actually, Caitlin, I don't know if you caught the radio that went on between Charles and Ferrari, where they didn't like really answer his question.
No, what was it?
He asked, and this is when Valtteri was behind him, was slowly starting to gain on him. He asked, if I keep driving at this pace, like, where will I end up? And they were like, well, if you keep driving like this, you'll end up in first. But it was like, I think what he was actually asking was like, if I keep driving like this without changing my tires, knowing that Valtteri just changed his tires, like, where am I going to end up in the points? That's what I think he meant, like, was asking for. But instead they're like, yeah, if you keep driving like this, like, you'll be in first. And it's like, that's not what he needed to hear. Anyways, everyone on Twitter is like,
or
just
do you think the strategy analysis was just that bad that they thought like he could keep it up and stay in first?
I have no idea.
That's a problem if their analysis showed that.
Especially with the old tires. I was like, what is happening right now?
Like, I think something needs to be fixed on their software or something, or fudge the numbers a little bit. I don't.
Oh my goodness.
That's crazy.
It was so funny because I think everyone had the look that you have on your face where it was just like, what are they responding with right now? Not a real answer? Okay.
Oh dear. Okay, so I mean, we're seeing a trend for this race. It's been there the whole season, but I mean, just very much coming to light right now that like communication is not crystal clear between everyone, and it affects the race. So
it does.
Maybe they just need to do like team builds, you know?
Yeah,
and team builds.
Figure out how to, like, because obviously there's also people that, you know, English is not their first language and things like that. So maybe there's some barriers there, but just like being together and talking more, because I just thought it was the funniest thing when I was like, no one.
Find a way that the communication is clear. I don't know. Maybe it's not exactly words. Maybe it's just like you say this and I know you're going to mean this. I don't know. But you need to come to an understanding for better communication.
Yeah, that was like the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. But, it's around this time we do see Lewis Hamilton. He does go into the pits. So everyone else has done it at this point. Lewis held off for a long time, but he got the team call that like, if you don't pit now, then your pace, we're going to end up behind Gasly. And I think with that is what Lewis said. Okay, and like, this is maybe what Jensen Button on your end, who probably would have caught on about and maybe talked about earlier, is like Lewis agreed to this like fairly easily.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. And then it's like, did he know he was still losing 2 places?
That's the big question, because obviously when we see him come out, he's pissed. So I don't think he knew he was going to lose those 2 places.
Which, yeah. Who would usually tell him? Bono? Bono and Lewis need to have a session together.
A little heart to heart. Yeah. But yeah, he ends up coming out behind Charles and Perez, but ahead of Gasly, which is right. Great.
And I think like they were saying that had he actually stayed out a lap longer, he would have come out after Gasly just because his pace on the OG tires was
dropping so much.
Trash at that point. So
yeah, he was pissed though when he realized where he was.
Like, I don't know what to say. Like, would you have pitted Lewis if you had known you would lose 2 spots, but your pace was still that shit, or would you held off for one more lap and been like, oh, okay, no, we do need to pit. I can't hold this, and then you would have ended up behind Gasly. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, it's so hard to tell. And then also you have to take into consideration that all the drivers were having issues with the inters, right? Like it took them
For the first few laps, yeah.
7 laps, like Charles was saying in the
Mm-hmm.
post-race interviews, to get to a
Like a
place.
good place with the tires.
Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of factors, and it comes back to what Caitlin was saying earlier, just about the like you don't have the full information, so you really need to rely on your team. But also, the team doesn't have the full information of how the car's feeling, what's going on with the weather. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
because the radar says it's raining, like, is it actually wet out there? So there's a lot of, again, effective communication that needs to happen, and a lot of trust.
How would you have handled it differently if you were Lewis's engineer?
Well, the thing is, so I don't know if he knew enough information, to be
So
honest.
you would tell him that like you could pass by so and so, but your pace is minus this from them. So you would get passed by them regardless in like 10 laps.
Yeah. And the first time when they asked him to pit and they were like, okay, we'll give you one more lap. I think that one more lap was fine. Like, I don't think that much changed. But within that one lap, I would have pulled all the information possible to be like, if you do not pit right now, after you're done your little freedom lap, then you're going to be in a position where we know that all the drivers are having a hard time getting these tires back, and it's taking, well, Charles said 7, but I'm guessing he knew that post race, so maybe like 5 to 7 laps to get these things turned on. So if you really want to hunt after that placement or getting on the podium, like, you need to do it now. I think that's what I would have done. Give him
I
the
think
free
they
lap,
also could.
but then like come with all the evidence to be like, look, you need to do this now.
Well, I think even with that free lap, they should have told him more to be like, the pace you're at, like, we will need to pit in this race. If you can pick your pace up in this freedom lap, then we might be able to change strategy,
Right,
right?
while
Like,
maintaining your tires, because if you want to go to the end,
mhm.
like, yeah, not great.
So maybe I'll be part of the debrief. How to
Yep.
communicate better. Anyways, yeah. So we went through like the two sides like this. The team can see everyone else around and like has their calculations how it should come out. But I think the Mercedes calculations did not take into account all the like they were calling it like the graining and everything,
Mhm.
graining period, awkward phase of the new intermediates. I don't
Yeah,
think their software accounted for that because
I
that
agree.
is Lewis was losing a lot of pace in those laps and he was so mad. He's like, why did we give up those spaces? I'm having massive graining. I told you. Like the amount of sass coming from the radio on this race was just like, whoop.
He was not happy. And I get it too, right? Because, if he had more information, maybe he would have made a different decision and he could get more points so that the gap wouldn't be 6 points, which it is now. Spoiler, I don't know. But yeah, I definitely feel his frustration. So I think it's a tough one. That one's really tough.
Yeah. I think like even if he had made the same decision, if he had the information,
Hmm.
he would have just owned the decision and that outcome
Yeah,
more. Right.
exactly.
But the
Like,
whole like not being told and then basing it off of that, like that is what pisses people off all the time.
exactly.
Not good. Um, yeah, anyways, I noted here that apart from Lewis, still at the front though, we have Perez passing Charles, which I was upset about to see. But he obviously had better pace than the
Yeah.
Ferrari. So makes sense. Um, there was a whole bunch of different things going on with like Lewis's speed. He's like 3 seconds faster than Charles, but then the graining hit and he ends up being like 2 seconds
Mhm.
slower than Gasly, who's behind him. And it's like, then he has to start holding off Gasly. He cannot even chase Charles.
And as he's like holding off Gasly, like Lando Norris is like starting to come into view too. And it's
Mhm.
like, what the hell is happening right now?
Yeah, it was wild. But that was pretty much the end of the race for the most part, would you
Yeah.
say? Did we
I would
miss
say at
anything?
this point, I guess something to note is Valtteri was like what, 9 to 10 seconds,
Yep.
oh, like ahead of Max. So Valtteri and Max were essentially just driving their own races at that point by themselves with like nothing going on around them.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Bottas just well in the lead, comes home first. It's first win of the season. First win since Sochi 2020, I guess. So good to see. I would have preferred it being Charles in this case, but whatever. That's fine.
I'm actually glad it was Valtteri because I'm like, he's going to go to Alfa Romeo next year. We know that that's not going to be the most competitive team.
Do you think this is his last win?
I
Or
think
do you
this
think he has another one in him?
Unless maybe this, I don't know. I need to get better acquainted with the tracks. Like maybe there's a couple more podiums this season, but I don't know what Alfa Romeo, just it depends on how he can build a team, but he's also getting older. So retirement is definitely something that's not on the radar right now, but probably sooner than for Charles. So Charles' time will come. He will be world champion. We know this. Like it'll be fine.
So I don't know. Between all those youngins, I'm like, who's gonna be world champion? Or is it just gonna go like back and forth throughout the years? Who knows?
Who knows?
But
Really.
pretty much your final list. You want to go from the back?
Yeah, so the Haas's were at the very back, unsurprisingly, followed, and I think kind of devastatingly is that Vettel was just above them. But again, it was just that he lost so much time on that one lap when he was on.
Yeah, he had 2 pits, man.
Yeah, it just not great. And then it was Nicholas Latifi, Fernando Alonso, again, just not being able to bounce back after the initial first lap. Then George Russell, Yuki Tsunoda, Danny Rick ended up moving up 3 spaces, so also not that great. And then Kimi, Giovinazzi, Esteban Ocon, who we should note is the only one who didn't change their tires at all. So he went to the very end, and if you actually look at the photos of his tires, it was like very, very.
Yeah, he goes into more detail in post race, and you're like, oh, that was close.
Yeah, that's a bit rough. And then Lance Stroll, Carlos Sainz, again, great drive by Carlos from the back of the grid to where he is. He also was named driver of the day, and he was surprised. And I was very excited for him because he's very underappreciated. So to see that people were like, go him, I loved it. And then Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly, Lewis Hamilton in 5th, obviously why he's very angry. And then Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez in the 3rd position on the podium, then Max and Valtteri. So Max ends up with this 2nd place finish, 6 points ahead of Lewis, and then Mercedes, because points are still points in the last few races, Valtteri has actually been far more consistent. I would actually say after he knew his fate, he's been performing better. Obviously last race, just power engine, like the power unit was totally screwed. But with that, Mercedes is still up by 36 points. So that's where we kind of are.
I really despise looking at the points this season now because of after Spa, they're all half points. And I'm like,
it's so ugly. Oh, and sorry, something to note is that Valtteri did end up getting fastest lap, I think sometime within the last 3 laps. And he was just so excited. He was so excited to win. And like I said, I think it's just such a good thing for his confidence. So I'm really happy that he got to land that one.
Yeah. It was good 26 points for Valtteri today. A day to remember for Valtteri, we can say, and a day that Lewis really is not.
Yeah. And you can't even forget it though. It's more like you just need to figure out what the hell happened, hey? Like this isn't a race that you can forget because you need to figure out what happened.
And it's not terrible. 5th is not like out of the points. So I mean, whatever. Take it, learn. There's still 6 races left. So we'll go into post-race interviews now. And we already touched upon like how excited Valtteri was, but he comes up right after he gets his car parked, and he's like, this is one of the best races I've ever had. Well-earned victory. And I was like, yeah, good on you, bud.
Yeah, seriously, huge. Good for him.
Max's post-race, one thing I thought was hilarious. They were like, what's the hardest thing about that race? He's like, staying awake. But then he does a lot. He was in a good mood for like this whole weekend. I was impressed.
Like I don't know what it is. So I actually didn't, we're watching a separate feed, so I didn't see this. But yeah, Caitlin, you were saying that like the first interview with the three of them was really fun, and this one's really fun.
Yeah, the one with the three of them was after quali.
Yeah.
And it was fine. And then today after the race, fine. So I don't know. It's kind of nice to see though.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was Sainz as driver of the day, and he's like, "This is the first of my life," and I was like, "Oh,
So cute! It's so cute." And I wanted to just say, I mean, I think we're going to be chatting about Ferrari later, but in terms of stats, Charles and Carlos are only apart by 0.5
oh, really?
right now in the standings. Yeah, as of the end of today.
Interesting. They're a good duo.
Yeah, I guess like, what's his name? Matteo Benito.
Binotto.
There we go. As much as we like roast him, he was accurate when he said that he definitely has like the strongest duo because they're neck and neck, and that's what you want. So it's good to see.
I mean, the drivers are doing great. We still have our thoughts on Ferrari management, but
Yeah, exactly.
they did okay today, though. So. So yeah, into the interviews, like Shanika and I was watching the F1 TV. Was raised Shanika was watching Sky Sports. And so starting with F1, I just want to note that like we had Alex Albon as co-host again. And he was still decked out in all his Red Bull gear. And I just get such a vibe from Alex that he's using Williams, like not even trying to hide the fact that like he's just such a loyal Red Bull guy. And I'm like, why?
We need to.
What are they promising you?
No, I completely agree. We need to figure out what has Pierre Gasly, Sergio Perez, Alex Albon, and all of these guys like in a chokehold. Like, why does Red Bull have them in a chokehold?
Do you think it's money?
I mean, I maybe, or maybe is there the prestige of being part of the Red Bull team? Like, I don't know, because it's like, at least with Pierre and even Alex, like they disrespected the hell out of you. And maybe that's something that's a negative for myself, but it's just like, if you disrespect me like that publicly, I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind. And I don't know if they saw Drive to Survive, where, you know, the way that it's edited, there's Christian Horner being like, "Don't worry, Pierre, like you're gonna get it," and then the next cut is him being like, "We need to kick him off." Like, it's not great. So if anyone knows what like hypnotist type behavior that Red Bull is holding over these men, just let us know, because I have no idea.
I was like, honestly, I don't think it's weird for me to have thought that Alex could be wearing like a Williams shirt.
Yeah.
Right now, even though it's not 2022.
Or like something related to Williams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, just full Red Bull. And I was like, I don't like it. Just a few more notes we got from like the general F1 TV interviews is that they were kind of saying that Lewis got out of his car and he went straight to go see what the condition of his old, like the OG intermediate tires were. And he saw they still had some life in them, and they're saying, and he was like furious. And I'm like, damn, Bono, you and him really need to have a heart-to-heart, hey?
Yeah, it's just not great.
We'll definitely, I think, hear more about this.
Yeah,
in the next few days. So Alex Albon did say he agreed with bringing Lewis in, which, okay, is it because he's a Red Bull guy and he's like, this fucked over Mercedes? I mean, I'm not going to go there, but he's like, a DNF would have been a lot worse. And like, if Lewis stayed on those tires, he was actually risking
a DNF, yeah.
Which is fair. So, I mean, like, I'm choosing to believe that Alex is just stating facts instead of being like hidden conspiracy of Red Bull fucking over Mercedes, you know? And then Sam Collins pretty much.
This note is so funny.
What?
This note is so funny.
Yeah. Okay, so Sam Collins with F1 TV, he's like, all the strategies really didn't work. The only one that worked was the one that like Bottas, Max, and Perez did. Then they stayed at the top.
Yeah.
It was not a good strategy by McLaren and Danny. It was not a good strategy by Lewis and Mercedes. It was not a good strategy by Aston Martin and Vettel to go to slicks. It's not a good call from Ocon because he was holding on by a thread to those tires at the end. He's like, There was a lot of stuff tried, not a lot of stuff worked. So that was funny. It's like, yeah, all in all, Shani, this race was not as thrilling as the past few years, but this is something we could definitely remember it for.
Yeah, just like the mess of what weather can do to a race, and then also intermediates, and just the importance of understanding where your team's at. All of it is, it's like we say, it's like every little piece really matters. I was listening to just the general Sky Sports conversation, and every one of the reporters were having different opinions on Lewis and Mercedes, and then collectively they came to the conclusion of this is a communications thing. It's like such a hard thing to call because you can see it from all sides, similar to the way that Caitlin and I have been talking about it. And then Jensen Button says he really believes that Lewis just didn't know and didn't have enough information. So Lewis didn't know that he would lose 2 spots when he came into pit. They also chatted with actually the Pirelli guy. I don't know if it's the director. He doesn't look like the CEO, but the director. And the guy fully was like, Lewis would have not been able to make it to the end of the race. The track is more abrasive, so that
well, yeah, that's what we were saying at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The track is known for tire wear.
Yeah, and they said it's more abrasive than they're used to. And one thing that he said he didn't do, which he should have done, was that he was going to tell all the teams that they need to do at least a one stop because of the wear, and that he just didn't get around to it. And then also,
I mean, it could have caused a serious crash. I just didn't get around to it.
Yeah, he was like, I was thinking about saying something. I should have said
That's
something.
concerning.
Like, didn't. And it's like, okay. And another thing that came up when they were all talking was just that it was really hard to compare Esteban Ocon's driving to Lewis's, because obviously Esteban made it to the end by literally the skin of his teeth, but Lewis is in a different car. He's a different driver. His motivations are different too. Like Esteban Ocon's just trying to get into the points and hold on to them. Lewis Hamilton's gunning for the drivers' championship. They're very different things, so it's really hard to compare the two. And the driver noted something that we've been talking about, I feel like in a few episodes, sorry, not the drivers, the commentators, is that Valtteri just seems more comfortable, and relaxed with his driving. So having some semblance of what his future is going to be like, and knowing that he's going to Alfa Romeo, you can tell that he's just like chilling and just enjoying the driving. And that's what really worked in his favor today. And they also said that they commented on the Lewis Valtteri relationship, which I thought was really cute. They were like, it's nice to see Valtteri so relaxed and see him when he shows up, he really shows up. Like he does what he needs to do for the team. And they noted that when Lewis and Nico Rosberg were teammates and Nico, would place on the podium or win, Lewis Hamilton wouldn't always go for the team photo. Like he wouldn't really go because of just how bad the blood was between the two of them. But then with Valtteri, heading in first place, like Lewis made sure to go and like take the team photo and be there for that. So I think we're seeing elements of their relationship. And they also brought up actually while they were talking about this, like, what's going to happen with George Russell coming in. And Jensen Button said, and I quote, George Russell's just a different kind of guy. I was like,
Huh.
okay. That sounds good. And yeah, and because of that, like, can Lewis find a teammate like Valtteri? Can Valtteri find a teammate like Lewis? Probably, less so going forward. They also interviewed Toto, which it was nice to hear from him. Gotta love to hear some strategy. And he genuinely thought that at one point that Lewis could finish in third, but after seeing how badly Charles and Lewis were dropping without, just swapping their tires, that the chance of Lewis placing in third was like dwindling very quickly. And he said, and I think this is interesting that he came out and said this outright, because I feel like Toto and the Mercedes team is pretty particular on what they share publicly, but he did say if Lewis came in sooner, it would have been better. And that he also thinks that Lewis just didn't have enough information. But it was nice to hear him give Valtteri a shout out. He said it was absolutely dominant. And I was like, with his like little Toto accent. And I was like, nice.
Did he say mega?
So it was great. It was really great. And if one of the things that Toto did say is that if Lewis had stayed on the OG tires, he would have finished in fifth anyways, holding onto it like by the the skin of his teeth basically, but it would have happened anyways. So it just
And
was
he might have even lost to Pierre Gasly as well and ended up in sixth, or he could have just had a tire blowout. So,
exactly. So it's really, really hard to tell.
I think you and I both heard they probably interviewed Lewis for both. So there's guessing with the tire, and he was not fast at the end. He's like, he should have stayed out or he should have come in sooner.
Mhm.
In my interview, he was saying he was pretty frustrated that he didn't follow his gut. But he's like, yes, we are a team. So just like, I don't know. That's a bit more level-headed to approach it than like get out of your car and go storm over to see the old tires and then just get super pissed at everyone around you.
Yeah.
Maybe someone talked to him after that and was like, here was the rest of the info. But yeah, I don't know, man. He needs to cool off after this race.
For sure, or figure out a solution quickly, or like move through the anger quickly. At Sky Sports, they interviewed Christian, which I thought was like, this is the funniest thing. So they asked him, like, what do you think? Do you think Lewis should have came in? And he said, oh, that's really difficult to say. But then in the same breath said, well, Lewis should have pitted. And I'm like, but you just that it would be difficult to call. I don't understand. Whatever, it's fine. He congratulated Checo on just doing a really good job and doing what they basically hired him for, which is to make sure he can defend against Lewis and get on the podium, get them the points that they need. And this I thought was interesting. The Sky Sports team, brought up the fact that the Mercedes has such high straight line speed. And what I thought was funny is that they kind of called Christian out a little bit. It was kind of awkward because they were like, yeah, like, didn't you go to the stewards at the FIA to be like, hey, Mercedes is doing something weird. Like, why is their straight line speed so high? To basically spark an investigation. And then Christian was like, I wasn't the only one to there was other teams. I mean, there's just like a lot about it was just so awkward to see him backpedal a little. I do think it was more than one team, obviously, but I just think it's funny that they were like, hey, yeah, didn't you like start this conversation? And he was like, no, it was everyone else too. It wasn't just me. Uh, but the last thing he closed the interview with was that Austin is Lewis's track. He is very comfortable at the track. And with the Mercedes just being so fast in straight line speed, with Lewis being strong at the track, that Austin is going to be very interesting come race day.
Very cool. I mean, like Christian definitely was probably the most vocal about riding on Mercedes.
Yeah.
And he just takes zero accountability, which is just
It's
ridiculous. Anyways, moving on from Christian. We had Mick. Mick came on the F1 TV one. What was cute, he was just like, he really enjoyed driving in these conditions. He had a lot of fun, he said. He's excited. The next race in Austin is home race for Haas, technically. So I don't know if they're going to do anything, but it's the lone American team. So it's their home race, technically. I wonder what's going to happen with Miami. They just get 2 home races. They're like, I feel more like Florida this year. No, more Texas right now. I don't know, but
it could be all over the place,
right? Yeah, no, it's cute. So Mick is saying he really enjoyed driving these conditions. We had Carlos up next in mine, and he also is like, it was just a lot of fun. So I don't know, like kind of cool to hear that. It's always good to hear the drivers like having fun, not too stressed out, even though it's literally like 300 kilometers an hour with a wet surface, which I don't know if I'd have fun. I'd be freaking out a lot. That
I would be too.
Yeah, this is where we got in that, like, he told the interviewers that he apologized to Seb for that pass, and for the little bump he had. He is glad that Ferrari went with that power unit change. And he's glad the penalty's over.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, now we can focus for the last 6 races. And I don't know, he had like this little smirk on his face. He's like, well, I mean, like, I'm more comfortable in the car now. And I was like, yes, kill it, Carlos.
Right.
Kill it from here on out. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Him and Charles, after these power unit upgrades, looking pretty good.
Right. They feel more comfortable, which is good. The one note that I had from the interview he did with Sky Sports was that he did mention the slow pit stop. And you could see him be like, okay, but we're like not going to hold on to it. Like today's still a good day for the results that they wanted. The next person that was interviewed was Charles. And the biggest thing that he noted was just the issues with the inters. And
When you switch.
yeah, when you switch. And he said he had 7 laps where it was just completely graining and there was nothing that he could do in terms of like trying to get back up to speed. And he put it pretty frankly, he was like, I think all the drivers were just confused and trying to figure out what the hell was going on. So I think Pirelli should have probably had that discussion with everyone so they could have adjusted their strategy.
I think so too. And so I wonder if part of these simulations is like Pirelli direct inputs, probably, right?
I would assume so, yeah.
So really the teams should be able to have very accurate information of like how the intermediates perform. And I mean, that turned out not to be very true on a lot of the teams' software. So, I mean, maybe that's something they deal with like behind closed doors. I don't know.
I think so, probably.
But moving on to Ocon. Is it Ocon? I'm so bad. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, so he is the lone driver, like we said, that stayed on his OG Inter tires the whole race, the whole 58 laps. And they're like, "How was it?" He's like, "That was tough." He is like, he was told that one more corner. No, how did we word this? If he did one more corner, like if it was a 59 lap race or like 58 and you just needed one more corner, he would have lost the top 10 spot because of his pace. If he had to do one more full lap at his pace, he's like, I would have got a puncture. Hence the whole DNF thing making sense with Alex Albon's comment earlier. Yes, etc.
Jesus, you're really playing with fire at that point, hey?
Yeah. And it's because, yeah, like you said, he's maybe not pushing at the same level Lewis is, just because they're kind of chasing different goals for this season. But like Lewis, Esteban told his team he wants to stay out. But he acknowledges he lost time at the end. And he was like, it was a very close call whether we go for slicks at the very end or not. But in the end, they didn't. But I guess it was drawing up quite a bit, so it was really a toss-up. But you could have ended up being sub 2.0, so I don't know.
Right. It's so hard to tell. You got a Lando interview? I didn't get one.
Yeah, we got a quick Lando. It was actually like,
nice.
It was pretty cute because it was Alex and Lando, and we know they're friends. So they're just having some banter back and forth.
Chatting away.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. So Lando said it was good fun this race, but it was also very difficult. But it being very difficult is what made it fun. So I don't know, like it's kind of nice hearing everyone be like, "Oh, I really just enjoyed that race." It's a nice feeling. He did go on to comment that it was too wet for slicks, but it was too slick for intermediates. So I don't know. It seems like a very odd situation.
Yeah.
That it would be hard to maybe foresee that or calculate what to do in that situation. So it's over. There was no crashes, no serious injuries. We are happy.
I know. We'd love to see it. I didn't have a Seb interview, so again, jealous.
Yeah, Seb. It was kind of sad. Like he had his mask on. You could just tell it was
not a good day for him.
He was like, yeah, I'm disappointed about making the wrong call and we lost some points. He was not a man of many words. It was a gamble to go into those slicks. He wanted to try them, but could not break that tire in. So yeah.
Poor guy. The next person that we did a round of interviews was with Pierre, and he said the same thing, I think, pretty much across the board. Overall, very pleased with his performance. He is doing so well in the AlphaTauri, so really love to see it, and acknowledged in both the F1 interview and the Sky Sports one that just like the turn one, he was just squeezed so tight, and then it was just a mistake. You know what I mean? Like it was just a thing that happened. And did you make this note of the 5-second penalty?
Yeah, and it was actually one of the commentators that said it.
Yeah.
And we mentioned it earlier. The whole like the commentators were like, we don't think it's worth a 5-second penalty. What Pierre did
Yeah.
to
And I
Alonso.
actually think this is where I'm going to bring up Alonso talked to a publication called Canal, which I think is actually out of just South America. I'm not sure. But I saw this via Twitter, and he actually said that he didn't think Pierre should have gotten a penalty, that it was a racing incident. So even though he called him a funny name and all that kind of stuff, in the end, like Alonso, who did get impacted by Pierre, also agreed that it shouldn't have been a 5-second penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just chalked up to racing. He did say, though, that towards the end, because Lewis and Charles were struggling so much to get their tires, away from the graining and back up to the speed that they want, he felt like he had a chance to get them, and then just kind of like ran out of laps, essentially. So, yeah,
Pretty much. I think he would have. So
I think so too.
and then we had Checo up on some interviews. What was interesting is he was saying he wasn't fully confident in the car. And I'm like, why? Like, why is Valtteri showing so much more comfort all of a sudden? And you're saying you're not comfortable in it. But I mean, Checo still got a P3, not feeling confident in the car. So he's like, that makes the podium feel even better. Fair. But I guess like maybe it wasn't just he said car, but maybe it was the all around, right? Like the tire management, he said was hard. He said defending Lewis was really difficult. So maybe that like mental game too was part of the reason he wasn't feeling confident in this race with his car.
I think that's a probability. He was also saying that when Lewis started attacking him was at a point where the tire management was just so important. Like he really needed to preserve his tires, basically. So defending against Lewis was just like fuck, like this is happening right now when you already are having potential issues. But Sky Sports, they complimented him, obviously. They're like, yeah, you did a really good job and like held him off for Max. Like, this is great. And then he said, Max, you owe me a few tequilas, man.
Nice.
They were interviewed together, which I thought was cute. So yeah, I thought it was funny. And Max said he will give him some when they have a race, right, in Mexico?
Yep.
Yeah, he said he'll give him some tequila after their race in Mexico, not before, because you know,
can impact the race.
Exactly.
I thought it was funny. They probably said this before in earlier races. It's just as funny that they're like, oh, Max, he maximized the car today. And I was like, punny. But he did really well in that car. And he's like, this is the most we could have done. Valtteri had great pace. And they knew they were behind. Mercedes had pace all weekend. Like they were in all the free practices too. So I did find another interesting note from Max is his take on the general pace of Red Bull. Like he was very much inferring it could go either way against Mercedes. And I didn't get the feeling it was like him hiding anything.
Yeah.
He's literally like, what I inferred from that comment was Max being like, we have what we have. I don't fully agree with it. It could go either way if we're going to win against Mercedes. Like, I think there could be improvements, but like, it is what it is. And there's probably politics involved. And there probably is. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Because like we had quite a few races this season where it was like very clear that the momentum was with Red Bull and no one would be saying a comment like this.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you. It was something similar that he said with Sky Sports, where it wasn't that he was, I don't know, like being hesitant or anything like that, but he was just like, yeah, like we got great points this weekend. This is great. But the Mercedes pace and like straight line speed and the fact that they couldn't even challenge Valtteri today, like they are fast. So it's also just realizing kind of where they're at. And we know that Mercedes, you know, they tested out a new power unit with Valtteri's vehicle and it just wasn't working, or they're making specific changes to Lewis Hamilton's car and that are quite impactful. We also know that like Christian Horner is busy ratting to the FIA about something. So there seems to be some complexity there, and that maybe Red Bull is still competitive, but maybe just not as competitive as the Mercedes is right now.
Mercedes just picked up their game a lot, I guess.
Yeah, for the like tail end with 7-8 races left.
It keeps things interesting, okay?
Exactly.
Pretty much like we already had one small interview with Valtteri. There was another one. They went back to him talking with an interviewer, and he's like, "It's a relief I won a race this year. It was not easy."
Oh. Valtteri, we're really happy for you.
So I bet you, yeah, he's been waiting for one. Where what? If there's only 6 races left, don't make me do this math live on my podcast. Knowing people listen to it. 17? Is this the 17th race? It took him 17?
Yeah, because it's like 23 races total, right, this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also if Sochi 2020 was the last time he won, that's over a year since he won.
I can see how it would be a relief.
It would be very demoralizing to be in that spot.
But yeah, that's pretty much all we heard.
Yeah, the Turkish Grand Prix, baby.
Maybe a bit like our hearts weren't going as fast as they have been for the past few races. So maybe that's good for us, you know?
Yeah, and we got to learn a lot about just the issues with the complexities of team and being on intermediates and who has to pull the trigger when and like what happens when you do pull the trigger and swap to a different tire. Like it's a lot of learnings in different ways for sure this race.
Yep. And it's important race for both Mercedes and Red Bull. And the fight between McLaren and Ferrari's probably closed up now too. So I don't know. I'm excited for the next one though. I do kind of want to get back into like action.
Yeah, I agree. The most action I feel like we saw was Perez, and
that was exciting.
It was really exciting.
Yeah, it was
like,
great.
You never know. There's a lot of rain. Like something could happen. But they handled themselves like staunch professionals.
Like exactly. They are experienced gentlemen. And they did not do anything stupid.
And they didn't take each other out, which was
it was great to see. Yeah. Good race.
That was really important. I was like, thank God.
Okay. But anyways, I think that's that for that episode, you guys.
Yeah. We're exhausted, but make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at GetCheckered on everything. We have a new site.
Yes, that is huge news. And if you guys have made it to this point of the podcast, thank you.
GetCheckered.wordpress.com. It will be getcheckered.com very soon.
We're just having domain transfer
issues,
timeline
for sure. It's just a problem. But yeah, other than that, folks, just reach out to us. We love to chat, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Okay. Stay checkered, amigos.
Bye, friends.
Bye.